Hello, everyone, and welcome to Virtual Solutions Group Tech Expo. My name is Jim Sahajas. I'm Vice President of Strategic Engagement with leading real estate companies of the world and the curator of Solutions Group, which is a highly vetted of quality platforms, technology, and tool companies that are here to benefit our membership. Few things I want to tell you about. We have our Global Symposium reminder, which is in Prague, the Czech Republic. It's October 7th to the 9th. And then we have our conference in Vegas at the Wynn, like we usually do, in 2026, March 2nd to the 5th. So reminders, put them in your calendar, and we will hope to see you there. So next, we're here to introduce something that's pretty dear to my heart because I have a deep experience with using this technology. And I want to introduce Sean Soderstrom from Corded. And he has a guest today with him, one of our leading RE members, and they will have a good 30 minutes of a conversation that I think will benefit everybody on a topic that without we don't have recruits and recruiting, we don't have a business. So that being said, Sean, I'll let you take it from here.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jim, and good to see everyone. As much as I would love to talk for 30 minutes, I think it's going to be a lot more fun to hear from one of our esteemed leading RE friends, and that is Chip Murphy of the Michael Saunders Company. Chip, it's great to see you. I'd love to first, if you could do a quick kind of background on who you are and Michael Saunders and what your role is there, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, that sounds great. Good to be with you, my friend. Chip Murphy, I'm the executive VP at Michael Saunders and Company. We are a real estate brokerage based in Sarasota, up and down the west coast of Florida. So we're from St. Pete to Sanibel. Today will be a timely conversation as we just launched in Sanibel, our southernmost office, about a month ago, and made the announcement of our expansion into St. Petersburg yesterday. So we've had a lot of excitement around recruiting and growth. Our company, we have about 700 agents, again, based in Sarasota, focused on the upper end, but anywhere from $10,000 lots to $30-40 million Gulf front estates. We have a mortgage, title, insurance company, other affiliated services, heavy focus on new development, and just a wonderful team about quality over quantity. So thanks for having me on, Sean, and excited for our conversation today.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Chip. And yeah, we're certainly going to talk about some topics that are relevant to expanding in these new areas, and congratulations on that. I guess right before we get there, love to understand, you guys have been working with Corded. So before we ever met and before we started working together, what was the kind of core problem that you were hoping to solve, and what were some of maybe the issues that the company was experiencing, that kind of induced you to, or led you to, to this meeting and to us beginning to work together?
Yeah, so I've been in the business about 12 years in leadership roles for the past 8 or 9. And the two companies that I've been with, we've used different systems. I've used probably 4 or so before Corded, but I didn't really use those systems before Corded. It was always tough to really get buy-in. I found that a lot of the systems we'd used in the past were clunky, archaic looking. And so I don't want to focus too much on those, but really part of the reason in going with Corded, it's been, I think, about 2 years. I want to say we were one of the early adopters. It's been incredible to see the change in the system through. But the way I looked at it in identifying a system that would work, one would be one that had the look and feel, something that was clean, something that was simple. I think that has a lot to do with that initial buy-in of leaders using the system. Is what is how does the interface look? The second was that it was a robust system. So I found that a lot of these that were focused on recruiting, retention, were more about the fluff, whereas this had all the meat behind it, but it also had the pretty interface. So that hit 2 for me. And then what part of what we'll talk about today was that it had predictive analytics as well. And a lot of people using AI as a buzzword the last several years, AI not necessarily being anything new, but this having AI that really worked. So, Sean, I remember I had a demo, and I think I had access to the product for about a month before we launched it. And so, what I was doing is anytime an agent had joined our company or an agent had left the company, I was tracking the predictive analytics on the likeliness to move. And I found that there were 10 in that time period who had either joined or left the company, and 8 of those were rated as highly likely to move. So for me, I was able to encourage our team and really have immediate buy-in because I had the data behind the system as well, rather than the system looks great, people like to use it, but it is actually working. So those are a few reasons why we ended up partnering with you and are thrilled and will hopefully be longtime partners.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I remember you you and I had a late on a Friday call, like right before you guys were signing up, and you told me that the rollout of some of the other systems beforehand hadn't gone super well. And so then we kind of co-created a way to introduce it to your team that would get them really excited first before we started going into all the details. And so I think that rollout is a really important first impression because that's where the company is putting a lot of emphasis on it. That's where you want to start driving accountability early. But if you have missteps in those in that process, it can really just send something in a very different direction than it could. So I'm glad to hear that the experience of rolling it out has been successful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a big part of our issues with other systems is that the orientation and the rollout wasn't well thought out. And there wasn't really a follow-up after the fact. Whereas with Corded, it was a really smooth rollout, being that I had been engaged in the program before, already had some positive feedback from it. And then also the follow-up. I think we had weekly calls with the team. Your team was always reaching out to see how we could get engaged. So it has been a positive experience from the very beginning.
I'm glad to hear that. So, okay, so I have a series of, I guess, questions, right,
Yeah,
that I'd like to ask you. I'm
sure.
kind of take them one by one, and hopefully this is helpful for the audience as they think about their kind of growth strategy, right? So, and you can answer this question in terms of how you do it in your kind of core markets. You can also
Yeah.
think about it in terms of how are you approaching it maybe for some of the newer areas that you've just opened. So I guess the first question is, which types of agents should you try to recruit? Like what makes, how do you go from a list of thousands to a list of dozens, and what makes a good agent for you, and how do you think about finding those people?
Yeah. So I think part of what we do differently is we have a strategy around recruiting and who we recruit. I find that a lot of companies try to cast this incredibly wide net, and whatever fish they're able to catch is the fish they keep. And so for us, having the ability to track and use a system where we can put some strategy behind it. And going with that, that was really part of us selecting Corded, was that we had the ability to really narrow down our search results. So in terms of what agents, are we most likely to recruit? I think it depends. A company like ours, we specialize in the upper end. So with the system, we're able to adjust certain filters like average sale price, number of years in the industry. So that's one segment that we typically focus on. Another that I look at are listing leaders. Again, you're able to adjust by units, by percentage of listing units versus buy side, et cetera. And then I think one demographic that I've always focused on are up and comers. And I think back to an agent who I had recruited several years ago in New York. She'd been in the business 2 years. She was with a competing company. She had an incredible sphere had just relocated upstate from New York City, had a really interesting background. And I thought, this woman has so much potential. And her numbers weren't anything that where she would be considered a top producer. And so we ended up bringing her on board, and she'll be in the top 100 agents in that market next year, doing close to probably 20 million. So if I had only focused on recruiting the top producers and just focus on a number, she never would have been part of our company. So again, I look at different segments of agents, and I think depending on brokerage, depending on market, there are different use cases, and the agents that we're looking to attract might not work as well for an ABC realty or fill in the blank.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, right? And I think a couple of things that we observe working with a lot of different companies. One is not to paint with too broad of a brush. If you're thinking about who you recruit and the answer is experienced agents, it's really hard to kind of then figure out who you're supposed to build a relationship, because it's truly everybody who's kind of done a deal or has a license. So the $1 to $5 million group nationally is the most productive group to recruit in terms of the sales volume that they represent, in terms of the sales volume that moves. And 78% of the recruited sales volume comes between 1 and 25 million in production. So that's kind of just another interesting anecdote to pay attention to. And I think you have to really ask yourself, do you know all of those agents? And even if you lived in a small market like Vail, the question would then be, do you know everything that's happening in their business so that you
Sure.
could go beyond, hi, how are you, at the coffee shop, right? And so there's the concept of being much more focused and much more targeted really applies. I think where we think of hyper segmentation, I just want to give an example. Not to say that this works for everyone, but as an example, and you were kind of getting at a couple of these, right? Is thinking about adding a whole bunch of different ways to kind of find agents together to get a much more targeted list. So those $1 to $5 million producers, because they move the most, maybe agents who haven't made any money in the last 3 months. They could be frustrated, even if they love their current company and they like the brand. Not making money for 3 months is stressful. Maybe not working on any active listings or pending transactions right now. Again, getting at that maybe time that they're less busy. Maybe filtering out people who have worked at their company for more than a year, right? Sometimes people switch in the first year, but often they've just moved and they want to get their feet under them and they don't want to make a switch right after making a switch. And then that last piece, you alluded to, Chip, right? But we can forecast 4 out of 5 accurately before they leave their company, often with 12 months of notice. And so that's, again, a great use of AI. That's a machine learning algorithm that Corded has developed that can, again, just help you just really focus. And so I shared that just as an example of the types of things that you can do to kind of really narrow that in. So my next question for you, Chip, is, okay, so we have a list of agents. Let's say you have 50 agents and you want to go after them. What is your approach to reaching out to agents? Or maybe I could say it slightly differently. How do you think agents want to be communicated with when it comes to recruiting? Is it an email campaign? Is it something else? What do you think works?
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on person. Where we find the most success is face to face, right? Being in front of that person. So we've used Corded as a system to identify, and then whether it is association events, industry events, where can we have an opportunity to get to face interaction? But let's assume that that's not the case. I think phone call is certainly one that we often use, and text is where I've gotten a lot of responses. So today I had 3 meetings with top agents in St. Pete, as we just expanded here. And all 3 were rated as highly likely to move. So I'm excited to see if things come to fruition. All the meetings had went incredibly well. So fingers crossed. But I was having a conversation with the woman who I just met with a few minutes ago. And I said, I was so impressed how communicative you were over text. I'd called her, I left her a voicemail saying I'd love to meet. I'd never met her before. And she texted me back within an hour and she said, I'm hopping on a plane. I'm heading to the Midwest, but I'd love to meet next week. And so we went back and forth over text. So I think texting is something that we've seen a lot of success with. I know our leaders have used the AI tool within Corded to help with some of those text messages or emails and reaching out. In the event they have brain fog or just for some different creative ideas, how do I compose a message via text or email? We will set up email campaigns. We don't see as much engagement through email as we do picking up the phone and calling or text, and then engage also in a lot of digital campaigns that are focused on some of the agents we're looking to attract.
Love it.
And I think
Love it.
too,
Yeah.
where we've found a lot of success is giving agents praise and recognition. So everyone likes to be recognized. That goes for our own agents first. I think retention is the most important, and happy agents will recruit for you. But on the other side as well, if there's any industry accolades they're receiving, reaching out and wishing them a congratulations. Corded, I know, identifies the top agents in every market. So if they're in the top 1, 5, or 10% of average sale price, of units sold, of volume. So that's something we use quite often. And then the newer tools that you've rolled out over the past few months with highest career listing and highest career sale, even if you don't know that person, it's so easy to reach out and just give someone kudos. And so we've gotten a lot of engagement and quite honestly have a lot of recruiting success because of something that's as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to bring it to life for folks and
Yeah.
maybe show that quickly. I'm going to just quickly show, because this is a webinar about AI, right? This is a list of agents that have worked with your agents in reverse chronological order. So if I jump into this agent in particular, I guess this agent works at a different company. They've done a deal with someone at your company. We can see who, right? That's Rindy here. Looks like Rindy had the listing and Ruth brought the buyer. Okay, great. So we want to reach out. So we jump into Compose AI. And what we're doing is basically coming up with an email, text, or phone conversation script that is kind of specific to that kind of event that you're doing together, right? So I can flip that over to phone call, do all that kind of stuff, click this button, it sends from your email in one click. I also want to bring it to life what you were saying right there. What we're looking at here on this screen is the accomplishments of your agents, right? So Dave Hall here, this listing of 1.3 million, that's the highest listing of his career. And so that you'd imagine kind of a celebratory phone call or text from you, Chip, or from Dave's manager to Dave that allows you to do that. And so we'll tell you that it happened. We'll also take it one step further and allow you to communicate about that, right? And so this is an example of kind of just getting to that point where you're talking faster and communicating more. We think of old school, technology companies having maybe data, and then maybe companies from 10, 15 years ago having maybe some insights, so they tell you what's important. And then the modern companies are then taking those insights and saying, here's the action, take the action now. We just did we've kind of effectively done it for you. And that is where you can really get in that rhythm of making sure nothing slips through the cracks. You're following up, you're genuinely praising them, you're coaching them when there's an issue, all of that kind of stuff. I also, again, just in the context of an AI discussion, Chip, I don't know if you've seen this. This is a view of market share in Sarasota. And now we have this kind of AI summary of what's happening in the market. So what is Michael Saunders doing best relative to competitors?
I'm nervous.
I don't know what the answer is. Chip, you'll have to tell us if the answers are good. But the concept here is, rather than going and finding data, right, going through and filtering in the MLS and doing all this kind of stuff, could we come up with a more interactive way where the system is smart, the system sits on 150 active data tables and can get you the answer that you want, right? And so, okay, so this is what Michael Saunders is doing great. Okay, what is Michael Saunders doing better than Compass? Again, I don't know, but imagine you're in a situation where you're maybe trying to recruit an agent from another company, right? It's going to start pulling in this information. Okay, you've got 5x the volume, right? More deal flow. You've got 5x the units. You've got a higher average sales. You have a higher agent PPP. You do a better balance between list and buy side, right? You actually have portion than theirs and more than 5x their listing volume. Your average sales price is higher, right? So I don't mean to pick on Compass, but just as an example, right, of another company in your market, it's possible to get to kind of have a conversation with the data that allows you to get those insights. And some folks can actually, that sits on top of agent market share information. So what are the reasons that Chip, the agent, who's like number 5, but not number 1 in terms of market share for that like specific property type price point, what are the 5 reasons to go with Chip? And it might say the close to list price ratio is higher and the days on market shorter. And so that can be really helpful as you start to get into coaching conversations. And so, you kind of started with this kind of point that maybe the system was easy to use. I would argue we can make it easier. And now with AI, we can make it well easier, right? That should be a conversation that you're having with your phone on the way to the listing appointment, to the recruiting meeting. And your speakers in your car are telling you, here the agent does well,
Yeah,
right?
it's funny.
So, yeah, go ahead.
I was just thinking the other day, we come out with quarterly reports for all of the markets that we service. And I write the executive summary and then I put context to all the numbers. So there are probably, we've got the summary and then maybe another 12 pages of context. And I've not used AI. I've been just doing that myself by looking at the raw data that we pull in graphically. And so now I thought, what great of a tool, because it's not just for market share, but for facts and trends and what's going on in the market as a whole, to use this system to really expedite and make me more efficient and spend a lot less time on some of the context I put to our quarterly reports. So I know it'll be a huge time saver for me from that perspective.
Yeah, yeah, and we've been playing around, and that feature that I just showed you is a week old, so we've been kind
Yeah.
of learning how powerful it is, and it's actually surprising us as to kind of how rich it can get if you ask it the right questions. And so, I guess as we start to kind of come to the end of this, for those that maybe are going through their budgeting cycle for next year and they're thinking about expenses and they're considering, it could be Corded, it could be another software that's they deem to be like relatively expensive. Like, how do you think about those kind of technology decisions and like what's worth paying for? And there's so many shiny tools and there's a whole week of presentations by companies about their solution. Like, you are in this interesting spot where you're in a very senior leadership role at a very successful company. You get to sit across a whole bunch of different offices, so you have a lot of things you could do, and of course like a finite amount of resources, attention, money that you can spend. How do you, this is not necessarily a corded question, but more just like, how do you think about that kind of budgeting process that people are going through now?
Yeah, well, I think for us, we just signed another 12-month contract with Corded about a week ago. And so for any of those decisions, I look at the data. So what I had done in the beginning of the year was I ran a study of all our entire leadership team and how many agents, both new and experienced, they brought to the company, focused on the experience. And then I ran that through the number of logins. So our account rep with Corded had sent me a report of the last 12 months, how many logins by manager. And it happened to be an exact direct correlation between leaders who are logging into the system and therefore recruiting top talent. So For me, that was an easy because I was strictly looking at data and numbers, and it told a story. I think whether it's Corded or any other system, it's look into something that people are going to use religiously, and something that is easy for them to use. And I know that sounds kind of simple, but for me, I think I have on average maybe 80 or 90 logins to Corded a month. So I'm not necessarily in an active recruiting role. As we expand into these other markets, I'm taking care of a lot of the meetings, but it's like my daily hot sheet. So when I first started in the business, I would get on the MLS and I would look at what was called the hot sheet every day to see new listings that came on in those past 24 hours, because it was a way for me to learn the market. And that's really how I've treated Corded, is every day I'm on there seeing what is going on with our own people, whose business is up, who's declining, where can I give recognition, what competitors are losing people so I can jump on an opportunity, what competitors are gaining people in recruiting, so I know if we need to be on the defense, and get to know more about that story. So, and then I would say to anyone who's looking at any recruiting system, to make sure that you're practicing what you preach. So again, I can't ask our leadership team to use it if I'm not using it myself. And I often will try to communicate through it. So if there's a recruit I know they've met with, I go to that recruit, I tag the manager, sales leader, and then they're alerted through their email, and it forces them to go into Corded. So we've got great engagement because it's a system that the interface is great. It's so easy to use, and we've been utilizing it as kind of our daily method of operating for both retention at first and then recruiting.
I love it. I love it. And you touch on something that I wanted to talk about, which is, wow, if we get the system or any system, and then it's a function of how well you use it. Accountability is a component of that, right? And it sounds like even with such a tremendous success story that you all have with recruiting and retention, there are, as you said, still a few folks who are holding out. It sounds like, right? So as you kind of approach, and I think this is part of your role, Chip, right? As you approach that kind of concept of accountability, you mentioned one tactic, which is you reinforce the system by talking in the system. Are there other do you review metrics kind of as a group where you could say, I'm celebrating so-and-so for doing well?
Yeah.
Can you bring it to life a little bit in terms of how do you kind of get that, bring folks along and kind of get them to really start doing what you're looking to them to do?
Yeah, so a few different things. One, we always goal set at the end of the year. So everyone sets their goals for experienced agents, number of agents, and volume. And then we put that out monthly. So every time we have one of our monthly meetings, we're looking at where are we as compared to this $300 million goal we set for the year. So part of it is about making it collective, so everyone feels involved. Although one office might have a goal of 50 million and another might have a goal of 20 million. I think it's about making it fun. Recruiting can be painful. In the past, I had done some call days or nights where we would get together as a group, and we would partner up and we'd make calls, and then we'd have happy hour after. So there was something to look forward to. And then I think, again, going back to recognition, everyone appreciates praise and recognition. It's about celebrating wins. So we have monthly leadership meetings, and at every one of those meetings, if one of our leaders have met their bonus requirements for an experienced recruit, we hand them a physical check. And the reason we do a physical check versus direct deposit is that we get to celebrate them in front of their peers. So that gets people excited. It gets the competitive juices flowing. And so we've seen a lot of engagement around that. And again, it's always nice to be celebrated in front of others. And then having some sort of structure, and that's something we certainly didn't have before we were using the system. We're still working on perfecting it. Some will input everything into the system, and others it's more conversational between The two of us are our senior leadership team, but developing some sort of structure. And I think the first part to that is having a system that most people are engaged in and using.
For sure. For sure. Makes sense. Well, I really appreciate the trust that you've put in us to be able to support you for a third year. It's unbelievable to think that we're kind of
Blown by.
getting to that phase. So yeah, thank you. And Chip, you're in the middle of trying to build a brand new office in a really exciting market. So, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day where you really should be recruiting to come talk to others about it. So
Thank you. Yes,
thank you.
we are in temporary space as we build out our current space. So this is not my office, but this is an office we got set up yesterday. So yeah, a lot of exciting things happening, and I've logged in probably 4 times today before these meetings to make sure all my reps are.
You're not in a double wide trailer or anything like that, are you?
No, I'm on the 8th floor looking out across downtown St. Pete. So
I've personally opened 43 temporary offices, and they never looked that good on day 2. So,
Yeah.
congrats to whoever installed the sign, at least on the wall.
yeah, right.
St. Pete's is awesome. I'll be there next weekend. I love that new building they're putting up, that oval kind of shaped building that's downtown. Am I right by describing it?
That's one of our developments, 400 Center.
Wow. That is awesome. I'd love to hear more about that from you someday, but
Absolutely.
you guys are awesome. Again, Chip, I mean, your knowledge is endless. I mean, you really, you and the Michael Saunders Company is just, one of our leading RE partners, and we value that. Sean, I keep praising you, and I'm going to keep doing it. You got a great product. It's a win-win for anybody who uses it. There's no question about it. And you should be proud of what you built there, because I'm proud for you. So you might as well just be proud of yourself too. So, okay.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, guys. We appreciate it. We're going to see each other soon, home one day. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time today, and everybody watching, and I hope everybody has a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you
Sean.
so much.
See you guys.
Talk to you soon.